Tunisia, officially the Tunisian Republic or the Republic of Tunisia, is the northernmost country in Africa, covering 165,000 square kilometers. Its northernmost point, Ras Ben Sarkab, is the northernmost point on the African continent. It is bordered by Algeria to the west, Libya to the southeast, and the Mediterranean Sea to the north and east. As of 2013, its population is estimated at just under 10.8 million. Its name is derived from its capital city, Tunis, which is located on the country's northeast coast. Geographically, Tunisia contains the eastern end of the Atlas Mountains and the northern reaches of the Sahara Desert. Much of the rest of the country's land is fertile soil. Its 1,300 kilometers of coastline includes the African conjunction of the western and eastern parts of the Mediterranean basin and, by means of the Sicilian Strait and Sardinian Channel, features the African mainland's second and third nearest points to Europe after Gibraltar. Tunisia is the only democracy in the Arab world. It has a high Human Development Index. It has an association agreement with the European Union and is a member of La Francophonie, the Union for the Mediterranean, the Arab Maghreb Union, the Arab League, the OIC, the Greater Arab Free Trade Area, the Community of Sahel-Saharan States, the African Union, the Non-Aligned Movement, the Group of 77, and obtained the status of major non-NATO ally. In addition, Tunisia is also a state party to the principal world institutions such as the United Nations or the International Criminal Court. Close relations with Europe, in particular with France and with Italy, have been forged through economic cooperation, privatization and industrial modernization. In ancient times, Tunisia was primarily inhabited by Berbers. Phoenician immigration began in the 12th century BC. These immigrants founded Carthage, a rival to Greece that almost destroyed Rome in the Second Punic War. Carthage was eventually defeated by the Romans in the Battle of Carthage of 149 BC. Romans brought Christianity and architecture to Tunisia, including the Ldjem amphitheatre. Tunisia was conquered by Arabs in the 1st century of Islam, followed by the Ottomans between 1534 and 1574. The Ottomans held sway for over 300 years. The French conquest of Tunisia occurred in 1881. Tunisia gained independence with Habib Bourguiba and declared the Tunisian Republic in 1957. In 2011, the Tunisian Revolution resulted in the overthrow of President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, followed by parliamentary elections. The country voted for parliament again on 26 October 2014, and for president on 23 November 2014. Etymology: the word Tunisia is derived from Tunis, a central urban hub and the capital of modern-day Tunisia. The present form of the name, with its Latinate suffix Iowa, evolved from French Tunisie. The French derivative Tunisie was adopted in some European languages with slight modifications, introducing a distinctive name to designate the country. Other languages remained untouched, such as the Russian and Spanish tunes. In this case, the same name is used for both country and city, as with the Arabic, and only by context can one tell the difference. The name Tunis can be attributed to different origins. It is generally associated with the Berber root, transcribed TNS, which means to lie down, or encampment. It is sometimes also associated with the Punic goddess Tanith, ancient city of Tynes. Before Tunisia, the territory's name was Ifriqiya or Africa, which gave the present-day name of the continent Africa. History: antiquity. Farming methods reached the Nile Valley from the Fertile Crescent region about 5000 BC, and spread to the Maghreb by about 4000 BC. Agricultural communities in the humid coastal plains of central Tunisia then were ancestors of today's Berber tribes. It was believed in ancient times that Africa was originally populated by Gaetulians and Libyans, both nomadic peoples. According to the Roman historian Sallust, the demigod Hercules died in Spain and his polyglot Eastern army was left to settle all the land, with some migrating to Africa. Persians went to the west and intermarried with the Gatulians and became the Numidians. The Medes settled and were known as Maori, later Moors. The Numidians and Moors belonged to the race from which the Berbers had descended. The translated meaning of Numidian is nomad, and indeed the people were semi-nomadic until the reign of Massinissa of the Massili tribe. At the beginning of recorded history, Tunisia was inhabited by Berber tribes. Its coast was settled by Phoenicians starting as early as the 12th century BC. The city of Carthage was founded in the 9th century BC by Phoenicians. Legend says that Dido from Tyre, now in modern-day Lebanon, founded the city in 814 BC, as retold by the Greek writer Timaeus of Tauromenium. The settlers of Carthage brought their culture and religion from the Phoenicians. After the series of wars with Greek city-states of Sicily in the 5th century BC, Carthage rose to power and eventually became the dominant civilization in the Western Mediterranean. The people of Carthage worshipped a pantheon of Middle Eastern gods including Baal and Tanit. Tanit's symbol, a simple female figure with extended arms and long dress, is a popular icon found in ancient sites. The founders of Carthage also established a Tophet, which was altered in Roman times. A Carthaginian invasion of Italy led by Hannibal during the Second Punic War, one of a series of wars with Rome, nearly crippled the rise of Roman power. From the conclusion of the Second Punic War in 2002 BC, Carthage functioned as a client state of the Roman Republic for another 50 years. Following the Battle of Carthage in 149 BC, Carthage was conquered by Rome. After the Roman conquest, the region became one of the main granaries of Rome and was fully Latinized. During the Roman period, the area of what is now Tunisia enjoyed a huge development. The economy, mainly during the empire, boomed. The prosperity of the area depended on agriculture. Called the granary of the empire, the area of actual Tunisia and coastal Tripolitania, according to one estimate, produced 1 million tons of cereals each year, 1/4 of which was exported to the empire. Additional crops included beans, figs, grapes, and other fruits. By the 2nd century, olive oil rivaled cereals as an export item. In addition to the cultivations and the capture and transporting of exotic wild animals from the western mountains, the principal production and exports included the textiles, marble, wine, timber, livestock, pottery such as African red slip, and wool. There was even a huge production of mosaics and ceramics, exported mainly to Italy, in the central area of Ldjem. Berber bishop Donatus Magnus was the founder of a Christian group known as the Donatists. During the 5th and 6th centuries, the Germanic Vandals invaded and ruled over a kingdom in North Africa that included present-day Tripoli. The region was easily reconquered in 533–534 AD, during the rule of Emperor Justinian I, by the Eastern Romans led by General Belisarius. Middle Ages. Sometime between the second half of the 7th century and the early part of the 8th century, Arab-Muslim conquest occurred in the region. They founded the first Islamic city in North Africa, Kairouan. It was there in 670 AD that the Mosque of Uqba, or the Great Mosque of Kairouan, was constructed. This mosque is the oldest and most prestigious sanctuary in the Muslim West, with the oldest standing minaret in the world. It is also considered a masterpiece of Islamic art and architecture. The Arab governors of Tunis founded the Aghlabid dynasty, which ruled Tunisia, Tripolitania and eastern Algeria from 800 to 909. Tunisia flourished under Arab rule when extensive systems were constructed to supply towns with water for household use and irrigation that promoted agriculture. This prosperity permitted luxurious court life and was marked by the construction of new palace cities such as Al-Abbasiyya and Raqqada. After conquering Cairo, the Fatimids abandoned Tunisia and parts of eastern Algeria to the local Zirids. Zirid Tunisia flourished in many areas: agriculture, industry, trade, and religious and secular learning. Management of the later Zirid emirs was neglectful though, and political instability was connected to the decline of Tunisian trade and agriculture. The invasion of Tunisia by the Banu Hilal, a warlike Arab Bedouin tribe encouraged by the Fatimids of Egypt to seize North Africa, sent the region's urban and economic life into further decline. The Arab historian Ibn Khaldun wrote that the lands ravaged by Banu Hilal invaders had become completely arid desert. The coasts were held briefly by the Normans of Sicily in the 12th century. But following the conquest of Tunisia in 1159 to 1160 by the Almohads, the last Christians in Tunisia disappeared. The Almohads initially ruled over Tunisia through a governor, usually a near relative of the caliph. Despite the prestige of the new masters, the country was still unruly, with continuous rioting and fighting between the townsfolk and wandering Arabs and Turks, the latter being subjects of the Armenian adventurer Kara Kush. The greatest threat to Almohad rule in Tunisia was the Banu Ghania, relatives of the Almoravids, who from their base in Majorca tried to restore Almoravid rule over the Maghreb. Around 1200 they succeeded in extending their rule over the whole of Tunisia, until they were crushed by Almohad troops in 1207. After this success the Almohads installed Walid Abu Hafs as the governor of Tunisia. Tunisia remained part of the Almohad state, until 1230 where the son of Abu Hafs declared himself independent. During the reign of the Hafsid dynasty, fruitful commercial relationships were established with several Christian Mediterranean states. In the late 16th century the coast became a pirate stronghold. Ottoman Tunisia. In the last years of the Hafsids, Spain seized many of the coastal cities, but these were recovered by the Ottoman Empire. The first Ottoman conquest of Tunis took place in 1534 under the command of Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, the younger brother of Oruq Reis, who was the Karpudan Pasha of the Ottoman fleet during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent. However, it wasn't until the final Ottoman reconquest of Tunis from Spain in 1574 under Karpudan Pasha Uluc Ali Reis that the Ottomans permanently acquired the former Hafsid Tunisia, retaining it until the French conquest of Tunisia in 1881, initially under Turkish rule from Algiers. Soon the Ottoman Porte appointed directly for Tunis a governor called the Pasha, supported by Janissary forces. Before long, however, Tunisia became in effect an autonomous province, under the local bey. Under its Turkish governors, the beys, Tunisia attained virtual independence. The Hussein dynasty of beys, established in 1705, lasted until 1957. This evolution of status was from time to time challenged without success by Algiers. During this era the governing councils controlling Tunisia remained largely composed of a foreign elite who continued to conduct state business in the Turkish language. Attacks on European shipping were made by corsairs primarily from Algiers, but also from Tunis and Tripoli. Yet after a long period of declining raids the growing power of the European states finally forced its termination. Under the Ottoman Empire, the boundaries of Tunisia contracted, it lost territory to the west and to the east. Great epidemics ravaged Tunisia in 1784 to 1785, 1796 to 1797 and 1818 to 1820. In the 19th century, the rulers of Tunisia became aware of the ongoing efforts at political and social reform in the Ottoman capital. The Bey of Tunis then, by his own lights but informed by the Turkish example, attempted to effect a modernizing reform of institutions and the economy. Tunisian international debt grew unmanageable. This was the reason or pretext for French forces to establish a protectorate in 1881. French Tunisia in 1869. Tunisia declared itself bankrupt, and an international financial commission took control over its economy. In 1881, using the pretext of a Tunisian incursion into Algeria, the French invaded with an army of about 36,000 and forced the Bey to agree to the terms of the 1881 Treaty of Bordeaux. With this treaty, Tunisia was officially made a French protectorate, over the objections of Italy. Under French colonization, European settlements in the country were actively encouraged. The number of French colonists grew from 34,000 in 1906 to 144,000 in 1945. In 1910 there were 105,000 Italians in Tunisia. In 1942–1943, Tunisia was the scene of the Tunisia Campaign, a series of battles between the Axis and Allied forces. The battle opened with initial success by the German and Italian forces, but the massive supply and numerical superiority of the Allies led to the Axis surrender on 13 May 1943. Independence. Tunisia achieved independence from France in 1956, led by Habib Bourguiba, who later became the first Tunisian president. The secular Constitutional Democratic Rally, formerly Neo-Destor, controlled the country as one of the most repressive regimes in the Arab world from its independence in 1956 until the Tunisian Revolution in 2011. In November 1987, doctors declared Bourguiba unfit to rule in a bloodless coup d'état. Prime Minister Zine El Abidine Ben Ali assumed the presidency. President Ben Ali, previously Habib Bourguiba's minister and a military figure, held office from 1987 to 2011, having acceded to the executive office of Habib Bourguiba after a team of medical experts judged Bourguiba unfit to exercise the functions of the office in accordance with Article 57 of the Tunisian Constitution. The anniversary of Ben Ali's succession, the 7th of November, was celebrated as a national holiday. He was consistently re-elected with enormous majorities every election, the last being the 25th of October 2009, until he fled the country amid popular unrest in January 2011. Ben Ali and his family were accused of corruption and plundering the country's money. Corrupt members of the Trabelsi family, most notably in the cases of Ahmed Trabelsi and Belhassan Trabelsi, controlled much of the business sector in the country. The First Lady Leila Ben Ali was described as an unabashed shopaholic, who used the state airplane to make frequent unofficial trips to Europe's fashion capitals. Tunisia refused a French request for the extradition of two of the president's nephews, from Leila's side, who were accused by the French state prosecutor of having stolen two mega yachts from a French marina. Ben Ali's son-in-law Sakar El-Materi was rumored as being primed to eventually take over the country. Independent human rights groups, such as Amnesty International, Freedom House, and Protection International, documented that basic human and political rights were not respected. The regime obstructed in any way possible the work of local human rights organizations. In 2008, in terms of press freedom, Tunisia was ranked 143rd out of 173. Revolution. The Tunisian Revolution was an intensive campaign of civil resistance that was precipitated by high unemployment, food inflation, corruption, a lack of freedom of speech and other political freedoms, and poor living conditions. Labor unions were said to be an integral part of the protests. The protests inspired the Arab Spring, a wave of similar actions throughout the Arab world. The catalyst for mass demonstrations was the death of Mohamed Bouazizi, a 26-year-old Tunisian street vendor. who set himself afire on the 17th of December 2010 in protest at the confiscation of his wares and the humiliation inflicted on him by a municipal official. Anger and violence intensified following Bouazizi's death on 4 January 2011, ultimately leading longtime President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali to step down on 14 January 2011, after 23 years in power. Protests continued for banning of the ruling party and the eviction of all its members from the transitional government formed by Mohamed Ghannouchi. Eventually the new government gave in to the demands. A Tunis court banned the ex-ruling party RCD and confiscated all its resources. A decree by the Minister of the Interior banned the political police, special forces which were used to intimidate and persecute political activists. On 3 March 2011, the President announced that elections to a Constituent Assembly would be held on 23 October 2011. International and internal observers declared the vote free and fair. The Ennahda movement, formerly banned under the Ben Ali regime, won a plurality of 90 seats out of a total of 217. On 12 December 2011, former dissident and veteran human rights activist Monsef Marzouki was elected president. In March 2012, Ennahda declared it will not support making Sharia the main source of legislation in the new constitution, maintaining the secular nature of the state. Ennahda's stance on the issue was criticized by hardline Islamists, who wanted strict Sharia, but was welcomed by secular parties. On 6 February 2013, Chokri Belaid, the leader of the leftist opposition and prominent critic of Ennahda, was assassinated. Tunisia was hit by 2 violent terror attacks on foreign tourists in 2015, first killing 22 people at the Bardo National Museum, and later killing 38 people at the Sousse beachfront.